Rangers, Dennis says, congratulations to Rangers for weathering the first half storm from Panathinaikos and then turning the tables on them. Far from falling flat in his first series competitive encounter, Martin has shown that he's far from clueless. No doubt the welcome appearance of Sir Alex in the dressing room after the match will have added a lot of confidence to the team. It now looks as though the Ibrox side could be a real contender for the title this season, as Celtic do not awake from their slumber in the transfer market. Robert follows it up by saying a perfect result for Martin. Exciting end-to-end stuff. 2 absolutely stunning goals along with a goalkeeper masterclass from Butland. Gives Rangers a huge chance of going through in the heat in Athens. We talked about it obviously in our late night show last night, Keith, but, you know, a huge win for Rangers and Russell Martin.
Said to you last night, Daniel, that I was struggling to get my head around what we had actually just watched last night. And 24 hours almost later, I'm still not much clearer, to be perfectly honest with you. Mm-hmm. I'm struggling to decide. And what I found interesting, some of the comments after the game, Russell Martin said there were 1 or 2 players that were dropping into positions on the pitch that he didn't want them to drop into. And that furthermore, when they'd been training and doing all the stuff behind closed doors, they hadn't been making these mistakes, geographical sort of mistakes on the pitch. And I'm wondering if he's talking in particular about Max Arens and Nico Raskin, because that part of the team in the first half, for me, just didn't function properly. And even if it was function as well as it could have done, I didn't see the sense and the logic in taking Nico Raskin out of that area where he can get in the ball, nip passes, drive at people, create stuff. And bear in mind, this is a guy who's a master of the art of midfield play. And he was getting shunted to the side to let a fullback come in and try and dictate the play. And Max Arens was getting loads of the ball, loads of time, loads of space. And he didn't look comfortable in there, in that sort of, directing the traffic role. So I wonder if that was, if that was how Russell Martin wanted it to look. And clearly there's an emphasis on inverted fullbacks and, clearly this is all part of his philosophy, but I wonder if it just went a little bit too extreme in spells in that first half. I say that, but there were moments in the second half when it looked similar again. I actually felt that Raskin, for the majority of the second half, played about 10 yards in off the touchline, further, more central, almost in a sort of left channel position. And I thought from there, he was able to get on the ball more and influence it more. And that's what you want. You want your best players on the ball as much as possible. And for me, what Rangers were in the first 45 minutes was they sacrificed Raskin, one of their better players, one of the most creative players, for him to drift out wide and for Arens to get in the ball. Mm-hmm. And maybe Arens just didn't have a very good match last night. Maybe there'll be bigger and better things to come. But ultimately, he's a fullback. Who do you want dictating play for the middle of the pitch? And why do you want that? You want your midfield players doing it because they're better at it. Yeah. So that... I wonder if that's one of the things that Russell Martin was a bit unhappy with in terms of that's not what he expects or not what he wants to see. It certainly didn't make a lot of sense to see it. All that said, Rangers come out of that game with 2-0, and let's be blunt about it, they could have been 5-0. It could have been 5-0 by the end of that 90 minutes and the tie would be over. Igamani header, wide, Dowell header onto the roof of the net. Raskin's had 2 shots in quick succession, great saves for the goalkeeper, and Raskin's superb reverse pass put in Findlay Curtis for a shot which got hacked off the line. So there was a lot of opportunities there for Rangers to actually kill the tie stone dead before even having to worry about getting the flight to Athens. And yet at the same time, the way that Rangers played, they were so disjointed, I felt, in the first half that they could have also been 3-0 down. So how are you supposed to... There is no back catalogue to judge it against other than, unfortunately for Russell Martin, the back catalogue, the closest one we've got would be what happened at Southampton at the start of last season. And there were a lot of these mistakes, overplaying out from the back, kind of full-backs abandoning their positions, centre-halves getting really stretched and teams picking them off in those areas. Mistakes, in possession, sloppy passing. It absolutely killed Southampton last season. So there's the nearest thing you've got to a back catalogue. I'm sure that Russell Martin knows that he's made some mistakes there and that he won't you know, he can't afford to be making the same mistakes, because that means you're not learning. So it'll be interesting. But there were one or two signs, kind of red flag signs in that first half, where it looked very like what you'd seen at Southampton. And if Panathinaikos, let's be blunt about it, had been more clinical, then they could have taken a 1-goal, a 2-goal, maybe even a 3-goal lead. And could you imagine how Ibrox would have responded to that?
Aye.
And how it would have felt coming off the pitch at half time, and how the whole aftermath or the aftermatch press conference would have felt, you know. So I think Russell Martin probably got away with one in that first half, was probably unlucky to only end up winning it 2-0 in the second half. But I think you take 2-0 all day long. And I think if you can finish off the second half of the job in Athens, then I think Russell Martin, it's a real big one for him, because this is his first European test as a coach. And if he can come through it against, okay, it's maybe not Panathinaikos from 10 years ago or whatever, still Panathinaikos, still a decent scalp. Bump them out of this round, and you've got the safety net of knowing, at the very minimum, you're playing group stages in the Europa League next season, or this coming season. And I think when Russell Martin was going into these games, knowing that he was up against the 8 ball, knowing there was so much work to do to change the playing style, to transform the squad, I think if you'd said to him 4 weeks ago, you'll take, you know, a 2-0 win to Athens for the second leg, I think he would have signed for that all day long.
Dennis in the comments says, last night proved Rangers need Dessers as first choice striker. Selling for £5 million doesn't make sense. It would cost more to replace him. I'd probably agree with Dennis, to be honest. £5 million in this day and age for a guy that's guarantees you almost 25 goals a season.
Well, and so fair play to Rangers then, because they've stood firm. They said, no, we're not accepting that fee. You need to get closer to what they believe to be a more realistic fee, or a more sort of appetising number for Rangers. We've just talked there about Dyson Maeda. Somebody comes in and offers Celtic 15 million, you're right, I don't even think there's a conversation for Celtic to have about that. Somebody comes in and offers silly money, however, there is going to have to be a round table and people are going to, you know, give their sort of ideas as to why it's a good idea or a bad idea. With £5 million for Dessers right now, I think Dennis is right. I think it just feels like a bad idea. I don't think Rangers are in a position, unless they're working away behind the scenes and they've got something lined up that they're ready to press the button on as soon as this double header's out the way.
Yeah.
Because they can't change the squad, they've got what they've got, and they've actually, as we were discussing last night, Daniel, when you really think about it, now, how it looks by the end of the window, we don't know, but just in terms of this double header against Panathinaikos, they've got some heavy firepower. They've got decent options.
Yeah.
With Igamani, Dessers, Danilo. We're waiting to see, is this the rebirth of Danilo? It didn't really look like it last night.
Well, in the comments there, AJSC Tech says Danilo is better in the press room doing translations because he has the agility of Doc Cotton on an icy street. Slightly harsh, I think, but I get his point.
I think that was a big opportunity for Danilo last night, and I think he fluffed his lines.